This is Cheri Honkala. You may not know her name or recognize her face, but she's on the ballot in 38 states for the office of vice president, running with the Green Party, along with presidential running mate Jill Stein.
Jill and I and the party, we've worked very hard against great obstacles to get on the ballot in 38 different states. We're on 85% of the population can vote for us, and yet we're being kept out of the debates. We're being kept out of the debates as women, as mothers, as women candidates running for this country's highest office.
This is what happened when she and Jill Stein went to the presidential debate on Tuesday, October 16, 2012.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are obstructing the vehicle of pedestrians and traffic. If you refuse to move, you are subject to arrest. I am ordering you to immediately leave this roadway, move along the sidewalk. If you do so voluntarily, no charges will be lodged against you. If you do not comply, you will be arrested immediately.
We're just here practicing our First Amendment rights.
To block traffic?
Our First Amendment rights to go in there.
So you're refusing to move?
We in no way want to block any traffic.
So you're refusing to move?
We just want to get into the debates.
But you're blocking traffic, so you refuse to move?
We want to practice our First Amendment rights. Thank you.
Remove them, bring them back to the
Jill and I, we decided, first of all, to go at 2 o'clock and to talk to the Commission on Presidential Debates and to ask to have somebody to come out and explain to us and explain to the media why we were going to be left out of the debates. And Jill in particular, because it was the presidential debate, but I was left out of the debates in Kentucky. And instead, there was, probably about 9 different officers that we were met by. And we tried to walk forward. They didn't let us walk forward. And so we came to a standstill and were arrested and carted away by the local police as well as Secret Service. And we were brought to a secret warehouse in the middle of nowhere. And none of our colleagues and any of the people across the country were trying to find out where we were, and there was no information about where we were.
But phone call?
No, but where we were was handcuffed with both of our hands together to a metal chair, sitting sideways for 9 hours. And the first couple hours were very difficult. When we began to get into the 4th, the 5th, the 7th hour, it just really showed how bad things have gotten in this country and how we are really removed from a democratic electoral process.
The Commission on Presidential Debates sets the debate rules. So even though Jill and Cheri met all the challenges necessary to be on 85% of America's ballots, the Debate Commission still requires 15% support in 5 opinion polls to participate. Democrats and Republicans formed the commission in 1988 to replace the League of Women Voters who formerly held the debates. When Democrats and Republicans set the rules, is it any surprise that the rules limit participation to Democrats and Republicans? What is surprising is the post-arrest treatment of Cheri Honkala and Jill Stein. 9 hours handcuffed to a chair and denied access to their lawyers. Why were they treated as such a threat?
I grew up in a poor household. My mother was a victim of domestic violence, and I ended up being removed from my mother. And I was raised in about 9 different institutions, including foster care. Because they didn't have things like battered women's shelters back then. Obviously my mother had failed, right? Otherwise her kids wouldn't have been with her, because that's what the social workers had told us. They didn't talk about things like domestic violence, the issue of literacy, affordable housing, any of these kinds of things. Most of my life has been about fighting for someplace to call home, someplace safe to be, and trying to keep families united. I was laid off from my job, then I was unable to pay for my rent, and then I talked to my little 9-year-old boy at the time, which is my older son, Mark, and said, we're going to now be moving into a white Camaro, because I had convinced a car dealer to sell me this little hoopty. So when I found myself homeless with my 9-year-old son, Mark, I knew when I couldn't get into any shelters in the Twin Cities, and I knew I could have froze to death, I made a difficult decision, which was to move myself and my 9-year-old son into an abandoned house on 38th Avenue to keep us warm and to keep my son from being taken from me. And for me, that was a real awakening because here I was faced in a situation similar to my mother's when she had raised me, of my fears of my son being taken away because I didn't have a place to live. And so I knew over my dead body, was anybody going to take my son from me? And so then I began the process of getting arrested anywhere from 2 to 3 times on a daily basis, and holding press conferences and saying, if somebody could show me where there was affordable housing or shelter was in the Twin Cities area, I would gladly go there. But me freezing to death in the United States of America and Minnesota, or having my child be taken from me, those were not up for negotiations. I would go to my 9-year-old and I would give him a handful of quarters, and I'd say, Mark, okay, the sheriff's department might come here in a few minutes and they might take mommy to jail, and I just want you to walk down to the corner where the 7-Eleven is, and I want you to call this friend and this friend and this friend who are on standby, and they will come and pick you up. Some of the first nights in jail, it was a real awakening for me because I couldn't believe that instead of the Twin Cities helping to assist me find some place to live, that instead they were carting me off to jail. And so really through that process, who I am today was born. And because I told myself that if this is happening to me, this must be happening to maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of other women who have found themselves in a similar situation. And that led me to hook up with other people that have found out about the same similar work that was happening in the Twin Cities. And I linked up with other people around the entire country that were interested in doing similar things, helping families move into abandoned houses, set up tent cities, do housing takeovers, foreclosure defense efforts, for 25 years.
America has a hard time with poverty. We honor humble beginnings, but only when they're safely in the past. In the here and now, poor people make Americans queasy. Every school child learns that Abraham Lincoln was born in a log cabin. Thing is, what is that cabin really but housing for the poor? An ad hoc home hastily thrown together from whatever resources you can find to keep from freezing. How can we simultaneously celebrate Abe Lincoln's log cabin and look down our collective noses at Cheri Honkala's white Camaro?
You know, Jill is from Harvard, and I'm from the School of Hard Knocks. So it's a great pair. You know, what I bring to the ticket is a relationship with the people that are at the absolute bottom across this entire country. And I really know that if we look at other parts of the world, it's when a conscious, independent political movement is attached to a political party and a social movement are linked together, we can really create changes in this country. We think that it should be against the law to let women and children freeze to death in our country when there's more abandoned luxury units than there are homeless people.
Public figures make a big deal about the middle class. But when the gap between rich and poor is the biggest it's ever been, they try to make the poor invisible or worse, blame them entirely for their poverty? Can we really say we have a representative democracy and erase the poor from public life? All this suggests a larger question. Have we given up the idea of one America? When we pretend economic and social injustice don't exist, when we take established candidates who champion the poor and arrest them just for daring to show their faces, this says something about us as a country. It reveals a darker picture of two Americas, one rich, one poor, one privileged, one thwarted, one free, and one shackled.